In the last two episodes in this series, we've shown how to create a sorting interface. In episode 1, the interface was workable, but didn't have any visual indicators. You had to know that you were supposed to click on the header. In episode 2 of this series, we created arrow buttons, which are obviously clickable, and also offer more control for the user. In this episode, we'll be making it easy to tell at a glance what the current sort order is by highlighting the selected option. To highlight the arrows, we'll use the gold class. It just changes the color of the text, or in this case, the Unicode arrow. This is how the highlighted arrows look. Of course, we don't want to highlight all of the arrows. We only want to apply the highlight when certain conditions are true. We'll start just caring about the sort property and not about the sort direction. So we'll use the class selectedSort as the condition for both the up and the down arrow. We're using Ember 1.11, but if you're using 1.10 or before, you'll have to use bindAttr. How do we determine whether isSelectedSort is true or false? Let's look at the information flow. We're currently giving each component a sort property that sets it apart from the other components. We can feed in the sort properties array, like so, and then use that to determine whether each component has the current selected sort. Let's implement this. We'll start with the controller, feeding in the sort properties array as selected sorts. Then we'll compare the first item in selected sorts with sort property. And this feeds back to the conditional classes we already put in place in the component template. And now we can see that only one column has its arrows highlighted. Let's do the same thing for the directionality of the sort. We'll feed in sort ascending to each of the components as isAscending. Then we'll create up arrow highlighted and down arrow highlighted properties. Both of them will be determined by a combination of isSelectedSort and isAscending. We'll make the gold class dependent on up arrow highlighted and down arrow highlighted. And now we have the current sort highlighted. Even though the component calls are a bit more verbose now, it's important to note that the conditional highlighting would have been much more verbose and convoluted had we not been using a component. The component let us separate scope and therefore reuse logic. This is looking like a pretty complete feature, but there's one more thing. When we refresh the page, it doesn't save our sort, it goes back to the one that we've defined on the controller. In this week's Pro episode, we'll use query params to save our sorting state in the URL, and then replace our actions with links.